GoldenEye is directed by Martin Campbell and stars Pierce Brosnan in his first outing as James Bond. Welcome to my James Bond series. I'm going to be talking about a select few James Bond films, some of my favorites, leading up to Spectre next month. You guys seem to be enjoying these older film reviews. It allows me to widen out my catalog of reviews on my channel. It gives me a wider array of things that I can talk about, and I'm having a great time doing it. So let's get right into GoldenEye, and this review is going to contain some spoilers. You've been warned. I don't think I've ever told you guys this story. In middle school, I was in choir. Yeah, I sang, and I wasn't great at it, but hey, I did it. I got up there in front of crowds, and I sang, and I'll never forget. My parents promised me that if I did really well in school for a certain semester, that I would eventually get a video game of my choice. And of course, I asked for GoldenEye 007 for the Nintendo 64. I'll never forget being in choir class, singing, hating my life at this moment, but knowing that when I got home, waiting for me in my room was GoldenEye 64, and I spent months and even years playing this game, and from time to time I still play it. So there's an added bit of nostalgia when I watch the actual movie, because you can see the locations and you think, oh my god, that's the facility level, oh my god, that's the dam level, and it works. Now, as stated, this movie was directed by Martin Campbell, who also later directed Casino Royale. This guy successfully launched 2 Bonds. He really understands the James Bond character. This movie introduced Pierce Brosnan as James Bond after a huge absence from Timothy Dalton's last movie, License to Kill, which, by the way, I actually really liked Timothy Dalton's portrayal of Bond. He was the first real dark Bond, and a major breath of fresh air after the Roger Moore, Austin Powers years. That's what I call him anyway. Not a big fan.
Would you get me a medium dry vodka martini?
What is
Shaken, not stirred.
But the public, having embraced Roger Moore at the time, was sort of strange with the whole dark Bond, and they weren't sure if they liked it. So there was a big gap between License to Kill and GoldenEye, big enough for Timothy Dalton to say, I'm too old to return as Bond, even though they wanted him back. Pierce Brosnan stepped in, and he really did a great job. I loved him in GoldenEye. None of his installments after GoldenEye were anywhere near as good as this film, because GoldenEye understood the basics of Bond. Number 1, Bond is not a superhero. Bond is a person. Number 2, the Bond girl is not a video game character. She's a person. Number 3, the Bond villain is not a cat-stroking, evil, maniacal genius. He's also a person. GoldenEye is a Bond film that is populated with human beings, and that's one of the reasons why it's more compelling than others. It also features Martin Campbell's brilliant action set pieces, his masterful use of wides, and he really just understands how to sell a fast-paced action scene. There's actually a lot of action in this movie that really felt reminiscent of Die Hard. Terrific stunt work like the jaw-dropping opening dam jump sequence, which still to this day impresses. This movie also introduced us to 006, Alec Trevelyan, played by the great Sean Bean. I had the privilege of interviewing this guy back in the day. He was really awesome and a really nice guy. I had the opportunity to tell him how much I loved him in GoldenEye and Patriot games, and of course Lord of the Rings. It was a really big deal for me, and it was really cool to see the guy that I tossed off of that cradle probably 500 times when I was in middle school. One of the things I find very underrated about GoldenEye is the cinematography. Check out this scene of Brosnan running down this stairwell in the opening and comes right into frame. The lights and the shadows are perfect. It looks awesome, and the entire film looks really great. It's the same director of photography as Casino Royale, which also is a gorgeous looking movie that I might be talking about soon. One of the most widely criticized things about this film was Eric Serra's score. It was very drum bass kit-like, and it doesn't always work. One of the earlier scenes introducing Famke Janssen's Xenia on a top, as her and Bond have this light-hearted car chase along this road, the score is very noticeable and does not fit in. For the action sequences, the score is great and it really propels the movie along, but listening to the score without the movie, as I have done, is nowhere near as entertaining as listening to, say, David Arnold's scores, who's done a ton of Bond work. Speaking of Famke Janssen, she was good. She was good. Now, as I said, the Bond girl in this film, Natalia, she's actually a human being. She has a compelling character. She's smart. She knows her shit. And it made for a considerably more interesting Bond girl, not just a, hey, look at my body, I'm hot and sexy, and you can probably sleep with me, maybe. She knew what she was doing. She was actually an investing character. You did care about her, and that's one of the best parts of GoldenEye. As I stated, the human beings are people. They're not just winking at the camera every 2 seconds. Speaking of compelling characters in Bond movies, by far one of the best choices this series has ever made was casting Judi Dench as M. She owned every scene she was in. She made M a great character. Before, M was just like, hey, here's a mission for you. Be careful out there, Bond. Go check out Q Branch for some supplies. And have a great day. Don't sleep with any women, but I know you will. Like, that's all M ever was. Judi Dench as M was fantastic, and she has an amazing monologue in which she basically looks Bond in the eye and says, I'm not going to take any shit from you, Bond. And by the way, if you don't think I'd send a man out there to die, well, you're wrong. She was an amazing character, and she just boosted the character of M significantly. Now, when I rewatched this movie to prepare for this review, I was really pleased to discover that this is actually a really cool story. I was into the movie. I cared. I wanted to know what these characters were going to talk about. I wasn't just waiting for Bond to get behind the wheel of a tank or, you know, drive a plane or a boat or something. I wanted to know what was going to happen in the next scene to propel the story along. Do you remember good thrillers? Like in the 90s, movies like Clear and Present Danger or Patriot Games, thrillers that were more focused on character and less on when we can do the next poorly shot car chase? Remember those times? GoldenEye was smack dab right in the middle of those times. It's a very good action thriller, and I'm actually invested in this story when I watch it all these years later. The basic core plot of this movie is that there's a GoldenEye satellite, and people are vying for control over it because it has the ability to basically EMP anything on Earth. And Bond eventually discovers that 006 is behind all of this, and it's actually rather tragic. There's a really great scene in this field in which all these ruins of statues have been placed. I'm not really sure what that area is supposed to be, but it actually is rather sad as you hear 006 describe his entire life and his hatred for his old line of work and his hatred for Bond. And it's all really well done. This is a great hero and villain story. And by the way, I can't help but sometimes hear the video game score whenever I watch certain scenes in this movie, like the statue ruins scene. The eventual archives escape scene is really intense. It is like Die Hard level intense. The scenes are magnificently well filmed. The action is visceral. It's in your face. Also, the awesome tank chase scene through the streets, all practical stuff, really well filmed, and you gotta love the tie straightening moment. That is Bond. It reminded me of the scene in Skyfall when he jumped onto the train and straightened his cufflinks. Very much like that. My main issue with GoldenEye is the eventual love scene and lovey-dovey beach stuff with Natalia and Bond. You just don't really buy it. It stalls the movie. It's sort of like Martin Campbell had a contract he had to sign with certain things checked off, and one of the things checked off was there must be a love scene or a love story with Natalia and Bond. It's always in a Bond movie. There's always love stuff. He sleeps with the Bond girl. In this movie itself, it felt like it stalled the film, and it just, for me, it didn't really work. But it doesn't last that long because we get to the finale cradle sequence. There's a lot of really great ideas here. For one, 006 knows of all the tech Bond has. He's able to look at his watch and say, yeah, I know what you're going to do with that. Too bad. I already thought about that. Sorry, Bond. It's a great idea because it allows the villain to be one step ahead. It's normally like Bond always has these gadgets and no one else knows, but having the villain know all about that tech is a fantastic idea because it makes it even harder to surmount this guy. The pen sequence with Boris flipping the pen around when Bond knows that that pen is a mini grenade, so suspenseful. Also, the end fight in this movie between 007 and 006 never gets enough credit. It's intense, it's brutal, it's fast-paced, it's really well edited and timed and everything. This really is a fantastically shot movie, and I gotta continue to say, it's underrated for its cinematography, and it's one of the few movies in which someone who falls off of something really high, you actually see him land. That's what Martin Campbell did so well with this movie. The action does not feel safe. It doesn't feel as if everyone's going to survive at all times. It felt brutal and realistic. Now I'm going to say something that might be unpopular, and bear in mind I have not yet seen Spectre, but I truly think that Martin Campbell is the best director the Bond series has ever had. Between this and Casino Royale, which by the way is my next Bond review, look forward to that, I don't think there's been a director who understands the essence of exactly what Bond needs to be. I loved Skyfall. It's a beautifully shot movie. Maybe Sam Mendes can make a better looking movie than Martin Campbell ever could, but for the Bond series, I feel that Martin Campbell is the most underrated director the series has ever had. He made, in my opinion, what is still the best Daniel Craig movie, haven't seen Spectre, as well as the best Pierce Brosnan movie, and he successfully launched 2 Bonds back to back. The guy knows his shit. GoldenEye is one of my favorite Bond movies, and because of the romance not always working, I'm going to give it an A-. Guys, thank you so much as always for watching my first review in my Bond series. I'm going to be back very soon with, as I said, Casino Royale. Thank you so much once again, guys, and if you like this, you can click right here and get Stuckmanized.